Hello. I'll turn this down a little here. So I was picking some music in the background for this evening. Sia Chandelier, Swinging from the Chandelier had come up. And I sort of giggled because tonight's topic is emotions, empaths, and empathy. And we're talking about that whole kind of range and spectrum that exists between how we can feel, what we can do with it, how we can take too much on, how we can not take anything on, and what it looks like to be healthy in those spectrums. And this song, crazily swinging from the chandelier came through, and I was just like, right, many spectrums. So we're starting from there tonight, because that's kind of how the energy rolling through is coming and happening from spring. And I am Rainey Ford with Mountain Woman Medicine, and we are here tonight to talk about InnerCartography, how to map and manage and look at mechanically, not emotionlessly, not in a bypassing sort of way, but in an objective sort of way, in a mechanical sort of way of, how can things change in my life in the trajectory that I want to change them in? And tonight we're battling with that line of emotion. So we're talking about the very deep emotional dynamics while we're talking about a mechanical place. So we're going to kind of place if you got questions throughout all of this, go ahead and pop them right down here on the side in the comments. You can just type a quick, hi, I'm here. This is, who I am. You can just give me a hi if you want. You can post questions, and we can have kind of a conversation back and forth. And that's kind of my overall desire for this kind of work, is to work with people and to hear what people have to say. I'm a creature that is living an experiment of life brings to me exactly what I am meant to respond to. So if you feel like you're meant to have me respond to you, play this game with me and go ahead and pop a little comment down in the comments. And while you're at it, you'll see a little thumbs up sign, and go ahead and give that video a thumbs up so that other people can find this more easily. A lot of the algorithms pay attention to things like likes and comments. And sure, I know a lot of people don't necessarily view these things from their own profile, and that's totally understandable. It's not a harassing, it's just it's a loving reminder. Have a sip of tea here. Some good peach tea. Calm things down a little bit. So I have a question here that I'm going to start off with. What makes you a sponge? The reason I ask that question is we as humans soak things up. We absorb our reality. We experience things in the world, and we either enhance our opinion of it, and it gets another layer of, yeah, that's why, or it goes kind of the other way, and it's like, that's why I don't do this. So one way or the other, we are either shedding a thing and kind of squeezing out something with our emotions, or we're absorbing it and we're drawing it into our being. Knowing what we're absorbing versus what we're wringing out is really, really important for when you want to go and get to a specific place, arrive at a specific destination, or you just want life to have more purposeness to it. You don't necessarily need to know the destination of where you're going. You know you're on a journey. This isn't to try to get you to have the end picture in mind. You can have the end in mind without having to have an end goal. There's no end goals here. Not unless you have a deep feeling in yourself of exactly where you want to go. Otherwise, you're looking for a sensation of increased peace, connectivity. How's your business doing? How's your relationships doing? All those things are measurements for how your world is for you. And what do you base your happiness on? Are you really happy? What does happiness look like for you? It's different for every person. The things that make me happy might not make the next person happy. Not everyone wants to come live on the side of a mountain and live a very simple life, growing my own food and raising chickens and, raising livestock and working with plants and making plant medicines and teaching people and, creating my life as a service to the world. That is my particular flavor of joy, of glee, of what brings me bliss and what brings me joy. That's not necessarily the same thing that's going to serve everyone else. So I invite you to take a really deep look at what are the things that really make you feel hopeful, feel blissful. Human design works with a concept that emotions run on a spectrum from hope to pain, back again. And what we experience is these swings of spectrums back and forth. And then they break it down even further, and they say that humans can be specifically, or on a general level, defined in a certain way, have a certain like lane, trajectory, focus, have a particular way of being, or they can be not have a set way of being, but be completely open, essentially being a mirror or a sponge. Sponge is where there's some dangerous work, because as soon as we are a sponge and we are empathically, and here I'm going to start to use this word, and then I'm going to go back and define it, and then I'm going to come back and use it again some more in lots of different ways, because this is one of those new crazy fads that goes around about empathy and being an empath, and oh, I'm an empath, or take this little quiz and see if you're an empath. Empath isn't necessarily the kind of thing that you want to be. It isn't necessarily the thing that's easy. In fact, it's not at all. Anybody who's truly works with being an empath has done a lot of work in themselves first, so that they are not personally rippling with the emotions of another person that they are picking up on and they are working with. Otherwise, their life is really deeply fraught and struggle, right? And even when we aren't associating with it, it can be exhausting. So either way, it's a lot. It's a lot to take on. It's a lot to live with. And knowing how we are mechanically designed to manage that kind of energy flow can be really helpful. I haven't found it not helpful for anybody who was wanting and willing and seeking a deeper way of understanding themselves. If they didn't come with any desire to learn anything or to grow in any way, then this system, much like anything else they might encounter, is going to serve them little. If they are looking for something, it can help to provide them things to feel into. Remember, this whole deal is an invitation to an experiment, your life experiment. It invites you to show up to your life and to live it fully, and to look at a few simple yet not simple, right? Everything is always in a spectrum. Simple and yet not simple guidelines for better living. It doesn't really boil down that simple unless you're in my head. So when you come here and we talk about this stuff, I'm going to boil things down in stupid, simple terms. Like, if you're emotionally defined, don't live in your emotions. Your life will be happier. Because that's what worked for me. I needed it boiled down on a very simplistic level where I could put it as a mind program of, I'm going to experiment that this is true and see what happens. Because I really don't know what's going to happen until I try something. And so programming that response in my head allowed me to change my actions, change what I said yes to, what I allowed myself to be surrounded by, what I allowed myself to be submerged in, what I allowed myself to define myself as, who I allowed myself to spend time with, what thoughts I let my mind dwell on. When I knew how to say certain things to all those different sides of me that were trying to figure out the choices to make in life around emotions and things that would impact me emotionally, life began to become a lot simpler. It took a chunk and a period of detoxing time to really see how much I was a sponge, soaking up and absorbing every single thing that was around me all the time, until I was so saturated with things that were not me that I began to implode or explode. Mostly it was a mixture of both, because then I got to the point where I didn't want to explode because I didn't want to hurt people around me, right? I deeply love people, and I didn't want to hurt people, and I was filled with a lot of notness that I needed to discharge and get out of my system, but I didn't know how to do that in a safe way. And so this trip down working with emotions and working with empathy is, if you are a sponge, and it's in a sense a mechanical thing, you either are a sponge or you're a lane, a road, you have a defined way of being. Somebody who is open in the emotional centers is essentially a sponge. Whether or not they allow themselves to take on, to act as a sponge, is their choice, right? We can change our response to things. When I talk about sponge, I talk about that action of being capable of holding all sorts of contents that is not its original form. So it's a very mechanical thing when I talk about being a sponge. And when I mean it in a physical sense with emotions, is that if we are an emotional sponge for other people or around other people, anybody that we are around, we are going to pick up and amplify their emotions. Not only are we amplifying them, but we are also feeling amplified ourselves. And so here's where again it gets tricky, and we kind of branch off and we branch off again, is that emotions can be an addictive thing. Feeling deeply is a powerful thing. It reminds us we're alive. Yep. Hi, Becky. Good to see you, lady. Emotions are a powerful thing. They can rock our boat and they can sink us. Yeah. Read about those emotional centers. There's so much around just the simple concept of being emotionally defined and being open in the emotional centers that can really help us to understand each other differently. Half of us are wired emotionally defined, here to be a specific way in our emotions, and half of us are not. Half of us are here to experience the entire spectrum and not have any consistent spot where we belong. Cool. Sponge metaphor helps. Awesome. The defined folks and the undefined folks, it's great to begin to see conversations happening on both sides of, here's how I'm defined and here's how I can understand how I use emotions in a consistent and reliable way. And I use them to help me make informed decisions. In fact, for some people, that is the seat of their authority, where their own inner being and decision-making process comes from. And for others, it is a place that gives them no information for the humanization of living. It may give them plenty of transformational and spiritual growth and kick you in the ass lessons and all sorts of different things on that level. Or it might be great wisdoms that come out or that become channeled through or that sort of thing. But it's not going to be something that serves on a human level. You're not going to be able to make consistent, reliable decisions while you're deep in your emotions. So bottom line core takeaway from this is those who are emotionally undefined, don't stay deeply in your emotions because your quality of human life will go down. It has no feeding source there. It's an open, raw thing that is going to suck and it's going to pull. That is part of also being an empath. At least that's what some people associate with being. So let's go into empaths for a second. Emotions. So emotions, empaths, and empathy all kind of play off of each other, right? Emotions is the physical thing, the tangible. It's the neuroreceptor process that's happening in the brain on the physical level. It's also a tangible experience we can feel in our body. Our hands get sweaty. Our heart starts to race a little bit. Maybe we're a little aroused. Maybe we're a little scared. Like those things operate kind of on the same parallels. All these different processes happen in our body when emotions get high, when we are up in our intensity in our emotions. And a similar thing happens on the way down, only in its opposition. We're going to feel like, we don't have energy, like, despair. We're going to feel pain, right? One is hopeful and one is painful. So emotions have that spectrum. Empathy is a thing we feel when it's a thing that happens. It's an action that is when we relate with another person, and not in a sense of relating with them, but we relate side by side with them. If we feel with them, we feel their emotions in our body. That doesn't help anybody. We can't make their choices. Those emotions getting stuck in our body, doesn't serve us any good because they aren't our emotions. That's not our choice that we have to make. And those emotions shouldn't be something that we hold on to and feel. That being said, it is hard to separate other people's emotions from your own, especially if you're in an open centers, if you've got the open emotional center. So it's a conundrum, right? You don't want to dive into feeling that way all the time. You want to see it, hear and listen for the raw. Listen for the raw emotion. Most raw emotion, if you're trying to boil it down to like a raw, simple 4 elemental level, look at it as in the realms of anger, force, rage. Look at it in the realms of pride and ego and love. Look at it in the ways of fear and inspiration. Look at it in the waves of grief, sorrow, sadness, and also inspiration. Intuition, inspiration is the other one. Breaking it into 4 simple ways of seeing how a person is feeling and looking for what's really going on here. Wow. Okay. Sounds like fear that masks sadness. Ooh, that masks anger. And beneath it is a lot of love. Right? So you can break down a place where somebody is on an emotional feeling level without taking in every feeling response and body sensation and neurological impulse and memory and visions of what happened. And we are capable of experiencing other people's emotions to that deeply visceral end, almost like we are re-experiencing their trauma. If you use that to help you see what is going on in the other person, then you are able to use that ability to be that wide open so that you can understand that fullness of a spectrum without having to take it on and take it inside of you. Does that make sense? Psychic Sojourn says Diana Troy on Star Trek is his favorite empath. Super Shiro. Yeah. Yeah, she was a really good one. Deanna Troy was she went through her own stuff when she got so close that she couldn't see things for how they were, right? We can get so close up with emotions that we have a hard time being able to see from them, see past them, through them, and see what's going on. And I love that her character, you got to be able to see both the human side of things, right? Like we're all that way. And you got to be able to see her where she was in her strengths and where knowing, how someone's angry on another ship that's pointing guns at you. Are they angry or are they scared? Scared means they might not fire. Angry means, you might need to bail. Knowing how someone is feeling is deeply important. Emotions are a language. When we understand the language in ourselves and each other, and remember, everybody else is going to be a lot of work because everybody feels very, very differently. Wrapping your head around how other people work takes a long time. Becky just said, still trying to wrap her brain around it. Getting yourself is one thing. If you're a right angle person, you're here to deeply understand yourself. And so in some ways, the right angle folks have a sort of a simpler journey. It's right here. It's right here. For the left angle incarnation cross folks, you are here serving a world. You are serving others. Your destiny, in a sense, is transpersonal. In a sense, what that chart is saying is, it's not all about you. And just so you understand, the right-hand side doesn't have anything. They get the same story. It just comes second for them. So I'm a right angle. I'll speak to that myself for a moment. I'm a right angle. I have to own and accept that I am here to have this life be about me. And my job and my task is to understand that so well that I can turn it inside out and I can shine my light to the world. And I can't shine my light to the world if I'm not full of my own light and if I don't understand how it's being held so that when I turn it out, it's the same as what it is on the inside. You want that authenticity to really travel, meaning you're not in a place of going, oh yeah, sure, I can do that. And then really going, God, why did I say that? Like that's a symptom of not making a choice when you were in touch with what you really needed and what you really wanted. And so living that deep self-reflective life where you're constantly thinking in on what's going on and checking in and deeply paying attention to the spirits and the messages and the people, the conversations and the things that happen around you. Like, it's no happenstance when you turn on a radio and you hit the shuffle button and a particular song comes up. That's not, in my world, that's not random. That's a form of spirit messaging. Spirit communicates much more easily on lines of frequencies that are simple, rather than trying to get inside our head and figure out how our strange reality works. When spirit gets in it takes little bits of songs or things that you've chosen that you like, and then it uses that language to communicate with you. It's very, very simple. And when you let it be that simple without questioning or being like, oh, well, that's weird. No, it's not weird. It's telling you something. What if it could be telling you something? What if? What might your life look like then? It's almost like when you start to ask questions like that, it's almost like finding your own doors to Narnia. And you can have that whether you're a right angle or a left angle. All you have to do is start being curious about the world, curious about your own responses to things. Why do you do a certain thing? What do you get out of it? Unmet needs motivate. If you're doing something, you're motivated. What's motivating you? Once you really know what's motivating you, then you can get down to the core crux and where the juiciness is. No matter how much you might find darkness there, the juiciness is found underneath of your motivations. Get clear with your motivations, and you will find the deepest potential inside of your shadows. It's where all the yummy, juicy magic is. Poke through here and see, hey, Terry. Right? Yeah. How have you guys encountered, what have you guys encountered this week that's made you be curious on a human design level or on an emotional level of like where something is, or maybe where's a spot where you noticed your wave or someone else's wave, or you noticed your like up to here sort of a deal and made a decision in that place? Any of those things alive for you guys this week? I know it's been a busy week energetically wise. People are thinking and stuff. I chose a couple of Gen keys and human design gates that have to do with emotions. One of them specifically is activated part of, I think, most of this week. It's the gate 22. The 22 has to do with openness, the realization of beauty within. It's a dilemma of accountability, because in order to have realizations of the beauty within and have true openness, you have to become vulnerable to shit going south. They call this the shadow of dishonor. And so as soon as you decide you want to be this open and this vulnerable, there's this inner that happens that says, I don't trust, bad shit's gonna happen. And when you move through the dishonor shadow, the fearfulness that shit's gonna go awry on you or go awry, you find your way to graciousness. We talked last week about having grace under pressure, having that grace in the face of dishonor, in the face of having something absolutely proved to not be what you first thought it was, brings you to this landing place within grace that has a softening aspect to the whole thing. And all it needs us to do is sit with our darkness, sit with our choice or choices. Just sit there and deeply acknowledge them. Feel it, be it. Like, for some people it's easy to shed a tear, and for some people it's not easy to. Whichever is harder. If it's hard to talk about it, go talk about it with somebody. If it's hard to cry about it, put on a song that makes you feel and move your body and hum and close your eyes and put a blanket over your head if you're still feeling weird, and just let yourself go into the emotions. Whether you are defined emotionally or undefined, no matter which way it is, it's going to be easier for you if you can just let yourself feel. Just let yourself be with it. Whichever is harder, right? Terry says, sure has been busy, but I've shared this with a few people and have made charts as a way for them to understand themselves. Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. That always warms my heart to hear. It's more people that can talk a similar language, and it's more people who are, and I don't want to say waking up, because that term woke is now starting to become, I don't know. Like many things in life, things that work often get taken and their meanings get broadened and expanded to mean things that they didn't originally mean. So woke is not a thing that you obtain and you keep throughout your entire life. Woke is it's a spectrum. Thank you, Eagle Eyes. It's a spectrum, and it's a spectrum you go through your whole life. There's always going to be places in you that you're not aware of, and so you're not woke to that until you are. And so you can't just go around, saying these are woke folks. It's yeah. I mean, oh gosh, who's the comedian on Facebook, the red hair? JP Sears. Good shout out to JP Sears. I really appreciate his sense of humor with the mockery of what a thing becomes when you put so much like this is the way it's going to be behind it, and it's just it cracks me up. First few videos I saw, I was like, I don't know about this, because like he has a very dry sense of humor, and so I had to watch him a few times and really like. And then I got to see him come back and be like, look, I'm actually doing this on purpose. And I'm going, all right, awesome. Because until we can break those barriers around the things that groups of people are rigid about, and, saying this is the only way it is, it's like, everything is a spectrum. Knowing where you are on the spectrum is important. Having your correct label is not. Mm-hmm. Right. I love it. Yeah. There's been people posting their charts in the Facebook group InnerCartography Facebook group. It's a part of Mountain Woman Medicine. If you're interested in being a part of that, you can hop over and request to join. I've been adding unit modules to it. They are learning modules that take people through the beginning stages. I am putting them up as spirit moves and as I have time. I am currently in the process of teaching an Herb 2 course and thoroughly loving working on plants and first aid and emergency holistic medicine and delving in with those 9 lovely beings once a week. So this InnerCartography thing is going to be a spirit-led and time and energy availability-led. And there's I think 3 posts up in the first unit. The first unit is about human design. It's get your chart. Step 2, figure out what the centers are. So it sort of gives you just a base beginning idea of like what it is. There's a picture associated with it, and to kind of look at it and just identify in your own chart. Are you open or are you defined? What parts of this are your lane and what parts of this are your wisdoms and learnings? We all got all of them, whether you're a pure reflector and you've got nothing open. In fact, when I'm talking, I often sit here and I'll have this sitting across the room from me. So I essentially speak from open first and then bring into the defined side of things. Because we are all such a spectrum, and I don't want things to feel so limited, right? It's if we can understand it as a spectrum, then that's going to make life easier for us and for everybody else, because we're going to begin to understand other people much quicker. Learning just about yourself is important, and learn it on a spectrum, because it'll be so much easier to have it be cross-translatable. And that's really, really important, I think. Oh, right. I wanted to chat for a little bit about the different way emotions can be in a person. You can have reactive emotions and you can have repressive emotions. Jen Key's book by Richard Rudd is a great one. It goes through the 64 I Ching. It shows what the shadow aspect of the I Ching is, what the gift aspect, and what its essence aspect is. And while and again, it's on a spectrum as well. So let me go there just for a second because it matters. So we know which direction we're heading in with our emotions. Remember, emotions are repressive or reactive. Either it's outward or it's inward. It's either explosive or it's implosive. And we can be a varied mix between the two. You can look more into something and see if you're defined in it, which means you're probably like that on a regular basis. If you're undefined in it, you're like, when you are in that place, you're like that a lot. But then when you're not in it, you don't experience in that way. There's lots of ways to understand more about how you do things and how it looks to the outside world, if you're trying to understand what you yourself is about, right? Like anytime we want to influence the world around us, anytime we want to have or change or gain access to things like power, money, influence, all of these things require that we take a deep, hard look at all the things that we are made up on. And we're not going to have finished our work until we get right down through the shadows of everything, right up through the gift, which is what we are as a service to the world. And then we also need to understand the essence of a thing. So the essence of a thing is where we begin to talk a little bit more ethereally, and it's only because we don't have something tangible to talk about, right? An essence of a thing is sort of the all-encompassing energy that it is. Okay? We cannot necessarily be grace, but we can be gracious. And so grace is the essence of gracious. Understanding. To be understanding, we can't. What we can do is we can be forgiving. We can say there was no wrong done. That's an action we can do. There's no real action with understanding. Understanding is another essence. Just pulling out a couple different ones and giving you an example. So they are a spectrum, right? And I say it's a spectrum versus a straight line because it really helps when you start to think about what it is that we're here for, okay? I'm not getting into all the different theories and stuff like that right now, but if you look at it under the dynamic of what it is we're here for, as in, we came here for a purpose, we came here for a reason. There's something about this existence that we don't know, but we knew, or somebody else knew. Whichever way you want to look at it. Like, I'm not getting wrapped up in all those semantics. I'm looking at the mechanics of the thing. If we came here with a purpose, then this essence thing, in a sense, is kind of represents where we came from. Okay? So that's kind of how I see it. I see it as the shadow is that victim state of humanity when we feel ourselves stuck in a place, or we are actually stuck in a place. Gift is where we provide the service to the world, and how we have taken that shadow and turned it inside out. And we have now turned it into a gift, turned it into a present. Something that feeds us and others. That's the two measurements. It's got to feed you. It's got to feel really good to you. And it's got to be feeling good within the community of people that you are around. And so that's a really good measure to let you know whether or not what you're doing is healthy. If it's not feeding you and you're miserable, don't do it. Now, I realize I'm speaking in broad general terms, and there may be people who are like, hey, I'm a parent. I can't not be a parent just because sometimes I don't like being a parent. Understood. That for those people who have life choices that they have made, that while it may not be what they're super gooey yummy about now, it's a choice that they made and they're going to see it through. How do they then get to be happy? They're like another screw deeper. Like they got to turn another screw wrench around and keep going a little bit deeper. And they have to use that because that is now their lane that they have chosen as an opportunity to see where they can grow more, where they can do more and accomplish more, and where they can expand. Anytime we are in that place of frustration, it is either telling us you have made a wrong choice or you are now growing. And I'm going to turn that or into an and because we're using bridging language here. So we're not using things like but, which always when you use but in a sentence, it negates the first thing you said. It makes the second thing more important. And we're not trying to integrate. We're trying to include. We're trying to create this bridging language. Inclusion community, inclusion aspects. Julie Woods has the language of inclusion, and I really love what she's doing. And if you get a chance, head on over to her page on Facebook and give her videos a listen to. She's another really great one to follow down these rabbit holes of deep contemplative questioning and understandings, so that you can figure out where you need to go in your world and where things need to line up better, where you can make choices that are going to have you more empowered. So tonight is really just a brief introduction, really, into emotions, empath, and empathy. I've taken courses around it. I have a course that I teach on it. It is a thing that I look at every person's chart with, and I look to see where are they vulnerable to the negative signs and symptoms of an empath. Most people who are working in a sort of a spiritual way with other people deal with the pains of being an empath in one way, shape, or form. And I'll also put that on the other end of the spectrum. So if empaths are on one hand, where they're deeply feeling, they're deeply sensitive, they're deeply open, they're like a sponge, and then you go all the way to the other end of the aspect where there's a much more decreased amount of sensitivity. They are not open to the rest of the world. This is the way it is. It almost has a coldness to it. That too can have its spectrum, where it's on the narcissistic side, or it's on the sociopathic side, or it's on the borderline personality side of things. And those things have their own spectrums within them. So when we talk about a pure spectrum, there's going to be spectrums within spectrums within spectrums. The whole thing is really just a gigantic circle. And the only way on and off the roller coaster ride is to dive in. Diving in by asking questions, diving in by having a topic that's like been on your mind, right? So for me, it was working with the 22. So Gen Key 22, or Human Design Gate 22, or the I Ching 22. It's all the topic of the same thing. And that's around that concept of openness, realizations of beauty within, and really deeply connecting with all of that and moving through dishonor and graciousness, moving through grace, and then understanding the fall from grace that takes you to dishonor. That's the piece that's the full comeback around. How the essence falls from grace down to form, down to human form, experiences itself as a shadow of dishonor. Didn't really suffer dishonor. It's just not there now, but that's its understanding of it. So that's kind of like the raw aspect behind dishonor, is that it's almost like it didn't have an understanding of its own value. When we can come to terms with where we have not had value for ourselves, and we have given over our power to another, even if that was in support of another. And this is the side that I more lean to, because it's not that, very rarely for those that I know, it's not that we give up our power because we don't know we have power. It's that we give up our power because we bleed for the other. We don't want the other to suffer. And so what we're not inclined to do is step back and let them learn their own lessons. We're inclined to reach in and help. And we need to not. We need to learn not to, while at the same time being our loving selves. Does that make sense? So when people come to this mountain, I have about a range of about 3 days where I can handle people being in my house, where I am saturated by their energy 24/7. We're sleeping in the same space. We're waking up together. We're around each other. And I also live in really close proximity with my partner. Now, there are certain people I can live that way with, and it's very, very minuscule amount, small amount of numbers of people that I can do that with. And so I kind of have an understanding with myself that I am about at the 3-day limit before I begin to tax my being. And so that's where I can know my limits and have that much time to be around someone's energy. And sometimes that can change too. If somebody's really intense, I might only be able to handle 4 to 6 hours, and that's, I can watch myself in the video here and be like, oh, I made an interesting face there. Even I can feel, well, I'd like to do more than that. And we do, because we We love, we feel, we want other people to feel better. Here's a piece around those that are emotionally undefined, emotionally open. We sometimes have a hard time feeling good. Like good. Remember that spectrum where the defined people have like, hope and then they go to pain and they come back to hope and bliss and they move back through despair. We don't really have a trackable rhythm. We don't have measurable waves. And because we don't have patterns in that way, because we are so open, it becomes really hard to track, which means without tracking, without patterns, we don't have consistency. Without that consistency, it's not a place to make reliable decisions from. And when we can step back from that place and honor ourselves and set our limits, be deeply present with our yeses and deeply honor our nos, and not have shames and judgments at ourselves for those places. And if we feel that we do, just remind yourself, it's okay to take care of yourself. You must take care of yourself before you can deeply serve other people. True story. The other two that I picked were 6 and 55. One is the feeling a victim to emotions. It's all around conflict and then diplomacy and peace. That's that particular one's cycle. And 55, the victim of drama. Oof, drama. Its shadow is victimization. Its gift is freedom. And the essence is also freedom. I love the ones that end up being both. Victimization and freedom. How do you guys feel around being a victim? Most people would have a negative association with feeling into themselves as being a victim. That's you. How does it feel to say that's you, Terry? Do you have an emotional response to it? I know she's emotionally defined, so I'm asking on that level. Becky says she's been one. Yep. I've been one. I can still find places where I am one. And I look forward to finding all the places where I can identify more clearly in myself and in others. Victimization, victim, and like, so victim isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? Like I look in nature and I'm like, yep, that rabbit's definitely the victim to that coyote, and so was my chicken. That is a description of the mechanics of what is happening. We have predators, we have victims. We don't have to embody being a victim, but we can still experience being victimized. Does that make sense? Terry says, I don't feel like an active victim anymore. Sure. There are times when I will still feel myself being, feeling a victim to external circumstances. That's one that comes up frequently for me, where I feel like, due to external circumstances, there are things that are happening that are making me feel a certain way that is out of my control. And all those things are true, except the fact that nobody's making me. That's how I am, and I'm not owning that. And so that's how I become a victim of external circumstances, when I don't acknowledge how deeply sensitive I am and mitigate my external circumstances, or just deeply accept it and find a way to be okay with it. Find my tool. Oh, yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. What was the other victim one? Victim, one of the 22 was the victim of others' ungracious behavior. Victim of others' ungracious behavior. And so those emotional responses that we have around that, and sometimes those are people that we are loving and healing on with, and we're working with. Maybe they're our clients, maybe they're friends, maybe they're a person, a stranger who all of a sudden was like, oh, I'm going to tell you my deepest, darkest secrets. Cause well, there are people read each other really well. People can tell if you are an emotionally understanding sort of creature, then they are going to love to enliven you with what is going on in their world. If you have the time and energy to spend with them, then by all means do so. And if you do not, lovingly be a good example. There's something that I had to learn on a very deep level, was a change in the perspective of my understanding of compassion. Compassion is not burning myself out for somebody else. That is not compassion. That is the opposite of compassion. That's not compassionate for me. And if I'm not compassionate to me, how am I going to even know what to look for in somebody else? Which one are you laughing at, Becky? You have one of those faces. What? Okay, I'm lost. For anyone just watching this, you have to watch the comments that are happening. There's this lovely sidebar, but it's coming in like little bitty sentences, and I don't always see exactly where they come in. That face. Right? I do an awful lot of not staring at myself in the window screen box. I am seeing you guys and chatting with you like you were here, that anyone will just come up and tell you all their secrets. Right? Yeah. It's a lot for people. It's sometimes a lot to be the person that other people come up to and share all their secrets to, because you're like, oh, well, how did this happen? What am I supposed to do with this? I'm supposed to fix it, right? And so then we try to fix it. And sometimes our energy is just that. And sometimes all that person needed to do was just get it off their chest. And they don't need you to do anything with it at all. And even if they did need you to do something with it, even if they had a need for something to be done with it, reword that there, that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Doesn't mean you have to fix it. Right. And I tell you, sometimes those are the places where I will find my deepest levels of sadness is, I don't have to fix this. And it's not on me to fix this. There's so much in the world that needs fixing, right? I so deeply want to be a part of the solution. If I become part of the problem, then I'm not helping anybody. Tending myself first sets me up to be able to be a strong warrior for somebody else when I can show up for them. It's like learning how to become a guardian of yourself first, so you can learn to be a guardian for somebody else. Because once you learn it for yourself, you can turn that shit inside out. But the healer, Terry says, the healer, the empath, feels almost compelled. It's been a lesson that I can't fix at all. Yeah. Right. It is almost like a compulsion. And if we feel the compulsion, we can choose to respond to it or not. I think that's what Eagle Eyes meant by picking your battles wisely, discernment. That compulsion, in a sense, can be our trickery. It can be our illusion. I need you. You're what I need. And that feels really yummy. So this is where we start to also get into a little bit of the will, the defined will and the undefined will. If it's something that's feeding our ego and it feels good to do so, we might overextend ourselves past our boundaries in a way that is unhealthy because it feels good to. But that feel good doesn't necessarily feed us, or it may. For some people it does, and it feeds them in a healthy way. Being full of yourself is not a healthy way, and that's not the spectrum that I'm talking about here. Being aware of what motivates you and where that comes from is really right. Also the ego. Yep. Yeah, the little triangle in the sort of the center-ish of the chart, sort of like right in the middle, it's kind of tipped on its side. That is the will center in the human design chart. Will, ego, and that one's for some people, it's directly attached to the emotions. In the circuitry, it is directly connected to the emotions. I can actually show you here. So in this human design chart here, this is the emotion. This is the will center or the ego center. And this right over here is the emotional center. So when we're talking about being emotionally connected, our emotions are connected to our root and to our adrenaline. Our emotions are also connected to our sacral aspect, where our motor is, our main primary motor. And emotions are connected up into our will, to our ego, and it's also connected up to our throat. So we have the ability to speak about our emotions, and we can be defined or undefined in those places. And just knowing the circuitry of where things talk to in our body and knowing whether or not we are defined or undefined automatically sets us up for a really interesting conversation. That's before we even get into like gates and channels and all that stuff. That stuff is really great information. And until we get an understanding of where we are in this system is meant to be a 7-year experiment. For those who just got out of my 6-week course, that's a very short amount of time to get a lot of information across. And it's literally over the course of the next 7 years that you begin to do things differently, that change things on a biological level, so that what comes next is something different or slightly more attuned than what came previous. It's the urge, it's the ego, or needing approval. Sometimes being powerless feeds people too. It's tricky business. That's right. Being in a place of being a victim versus being in a place of serving victims, those are two different intense traps. And I don't mean traps. I mean traps in the sense of it has the capability of capturing you, of holding you there, of tricking you. A trap is a super practical thing, right? Like the energy of the thing is not what I am talking about in the negative. I'm just inviting you to become aware of what the energy is that can trap and hold you. If you are undefined in the emotions and you are undefined in the will, that's a setup. It's kind of like a trap, if you will, of getting you to feel better, feel more emotions, feel more like a human. Follow me here for a second. Feel more like a human, right? Emotions and humanity are crazy things, right? If we're not feeling crazy, then we're not really living human life. It's kind of like how society pushes us to feel. An emotional double order. Absolutely. Very well said. Yes, an emotional double order. I want to live peacefully and I want to live simply. Oh no, there's all these things that need fixing. I'm going to go do this, but I want to be happy. But I need, and it's a double. It's what Brandon means, or eagle eye, psychic sojourns. He means double order, as in this order and this order. Double orders create walls. Double orders have no
barriers to manifesting.
It's a barrier to manifesting. I was thinking about how I had processed it before, where double orders hold no borders, meaning you cannot create a container with a double order, because a double order is this, but also this. And so it leaves this wide open gap here in the middle for all sorts of things to go awry. And so you cannot create a solid container if you are constantly putting double orders in. When I work with production teams, right? So events and festivals, I've worked them for a number of years. I really love them. They're really like a core heart and soul, because I know how powerful it is to have a transformational experience and to go home and be like, whoa, I am blown away. And now my brain is thinking in an entirely different way. It's a great reset. It's a great flipping of the script. It's a great way to wake up, right? But there's a lot of work that comes after waking up. And that's not even what I'm talking about in this moment here. Talking about transformational festivals and experiences. You have a production side and you have a logistical side. When those two make double orders on themselves, I want this, and the other side says, well, I can only provide this because this is the only thing you've given me. You create a double order, and now you can't hold the container. So over and over again, making double orders on ourselves in the forms of how we feel and how we emotionally invest ourselves is really a powerful place to destroy what we're trying to create or to build it up. The more I worked with my understanding my emotions, I began to deeply understand why sometimes I can run the spectrum between feeling nothing, feeling almost sociopathic, and not in the form of wanting to do something in a negative way, but just not having emotional reactions around certain things that exists within me. It took a while for me to be able to face that, not judge, and also use it where it is necessary. It helps me when I'm tending my dog who comes back bloody and bleeding, and it helps me to manage the situation and tend his needs without me myself being emotionally overwrought. I don't need to identify with that situation in this moment. Whoosh. Loving through the wall, but not allowing it through. Not listening to that compulsion. This animal needs me in this moment in time. Moose is fine, by the way. He came back with a nice big gash across the top of his nose, and his nose was bleeding. Looked like he might have shoved his face down a hole and met something or encountered something that was uncomfortable. And he was sore for a little while, but he's all right. Oh, wow. Yeah, we've almost made it an hour this time. Well, I appreciate all the people who've come on. It's lovely to see y'all. It's yummy. Meow. Good stuff. Yeah, couple little bits. Let's see. Anything I talked about tonight, I will link down below. So if you would like to find Julie Woods, if you would like to find Psychic Sojourns and what he talks about, if you'd like to find these different people, I'll link things down below. And if you appreciate what I'm doing and you'd like to make donations, please understand that I am putting 33% of donations towards a Mountain Woman Medicine Pay It Forward program. This is to help people who monetary means is really tight for them and they still want to be able to come in and do stuff. This helps to pay their way before they even get here, making it even more inviting when people do actually say, hey, I'd like to do this. I don't know what I've got to bring. Here's, and I can go, oh, darling, thank you for your bravery. Here's this is already paving its way for you. So, yeah, there's that piece. I think that's about it.
Like, subscribe.
Right. Like, subscribe, do that whole little dance thing. Invite friends. Please feel invited to share this with your friends and be like, oh, remember that thing I was talking about? This woman doing this thing and this human design stuff through here. And they can write comments after the fact. They can comment something on a video at the bottom in the regular comments and just ask a question about whether it's about their own chart or trying to understand another dynamic. I will be doing this emotions, empath, and empathy again. It is, like I said, it's a whole like course sort of thing that I work with and teach to kind of outline all the different aspects behind all of them. And I don't want to just do it in just a classroom setting. I want to be able to have this conversation more with people one-on-one. That's really like blunt and transparent and yummy. Like, this is how we get stuff done. This is how we get things moving in this world and get things connected and where we all want to go. So I'm here doing my lane. I love y'all. I look forward to seeing y'all next week. Mwah. Lots of love from the mountain.